A man who wears his authority like a suit of armor sits enthroned behind a scarred metal desk. His name is Detective Sergeant Frank Miller, but in the kingdom of the 17th Precinct, he is simply the king. The kingdom is a tired one, smelling of stale coffee, desperation, and cheap disinfectant that fails to mask the scent of human misery. Papers rise in defiant stacks on his desk, a testament to a city bleeding from 1,000 small cuts. But Miller is not a healer. He is a hammer. And to a hammer, every person of a certain skin tone, from a certain neighborhood, is a nail waiting to be driven down. He surveys his domain with a proprietary air, his gut straining against the buttons of a cheap polyester shirt, his tie a greasy noose around his thick neck. He is a man carved from granite and prejudice, his eyes 2 chips of flint that see guilt before they ever see a person. His clearance rate is the stuff of precinct legend, a towering monument to his effectiveness. No one dares to look too closely at the foundations of that monument, at the cracked and broken lives that serve as its mortar. Today, he has a new nail. A kid named Leo Jackson, 17 years old, with eyes wide with a terror so pure it is almost blinding. They drag the boy past Miller's desk, a sapling caught in the grip of 2 lumbering oaks in blue. Leo's wrists are raw from the cuffs, his face a canvas of confusion and fear. Miller does not even look up from his paperwork. He has already tried and convicted this boy in the cold, cramped courtroom of his mind. The file is thin, but Miller's imagination is thick with stereotype. Young. Black. From the Warren Street Projects. The holy trinity of automatic guilt. He takes a greasy bite of a day-old donut, the sugar dusting his mustache. Another one off the streets. He considers it a public service. Across the chaotic squad room, in the purgatory of the public waiting area, sits another man. This man is the antithesis of Frank Miller. Where Miller is a loud, discordant clang, this man is a profound and patient silence. His name is Arthur Vance. He is a silhouette of a man, etched against the grimy, wire mesh window. He wears a simple, dark jacket, worn at the elbows but impeccably clean. His hands, resting on his knees, are long and elegant, the knuckles swollen with the quiet dignity of age. His skin is the color of rich, dark earth, and his hair is a crown of silver, close-cropped and neat. He sits on the hard plastic chair as if it were a throne of his own, not one of power, but one of immense, unshakable stillness. He has been waiting for 2 hours. He has watched the precinct's frantic ballet of shoddy procedure and casual cruelty without a flicker of expression on his face. He is here to give a statement. He is a witness. He saw the purse snatching on the corner of Elm and Parker. He saw the perpetrator's face. He saw the fear in the old woman's eyes as she fell to the pavement. And he saw, with perfect, damning clarity, that the man who ran was not the boy they now have in cuffs. He had approached the desk sergeant an hour ago, a portly man whose uniform seemed to be losing a battle of attrition with his belly. "I'm here to give a witness statement regarding the robbery on Elm Street." Arthur's voice was low and calm, a river flowing deep. The sergeant hadn't looked up from his crossword puzzle. "Get in line." "Oh, wait. There is no line. Just sit down. Someone will get to you." "It's important," Arthur had insisted gently. "You have the wrong person." That got him a glance. A dismissive, weary glance that sized him up and filed him away in a cabinet labeled "Oh nuisance." "Everyone's a lawyer," the sergeant grunted, turning back to his puzzle. "Sit down." So Arthur Saturday. And he waited. He watched as Detective Miller finally emerged from his office, swaggering like a conqueror returning from a minor but satisfying skirmish. Miller barks at a junior officer, Officer Davis, a young man whose ambition has not yet been entirely corroded by the precinct's cynicism. "Davis! Get in here. We're closing the Elm Street robbery. Got the punk in interrogation. Let's get the confession and go home." Arthur stands up. He moves with a slow, deliberate grace that makes the simple act of rising from a chair seem significant. He approaches the desk. "Excuse me, detective." Miller turns, his expression one of profound annoyance. "Who dares to interrupt the king?" He sees an old black man in a worn coat. In Miller's world, this is not a citizen. This is not a witness. This is, at best, a piece of the scenery, and at worst, an obstacle. What? Miller's voice is a bark of impatience. I am a witness to the robbery on Elm Street, Arthur says, his voice even. You have the wrong boy. A silence falls over the immediate area. The desk sergeant looks up, a flicker of interest in his dull eyes. Officer Davis pauses, his hand on the door to the interrogation room. Miller stares at Arthur for a long moment. Then, he laughs. It is not a pleasant sound. It is a harsh, grating noise, full of contempt and ridicule. Oh, you're a witness, he sneers, looking Arthur up and down, his gaze lingering on the worn coat and the old shoes. Let me guess. You saw it all from your apartment window 2 blocks away, right through a fire escape and a tree. I was 10 feet away, Arthur replies, his composure absolute. Miller's smirk widens. 10 feet. Right. And you got a good look at him, I bet. Real good look. Tell me, Pop, what did he look like? He leans forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, mocking whisper. Did he look a lot like the kid we have in the box right now? The implication is ugly and clear. You people all look the same. Arthur's eyes, which had been calm and observant, now harden. They become 2 pieces of polished obsidian. No, he says, the word a single, cold stone dropped into a still pond. He looked nothing like him. Miller's amusement evaporates, replaced by a flash of irritation. This was not the script he was expecting. The old man was supposed to be confused, easily led, or irrelevant. He was not supposed to be defiant. Look, Miller says, his tone shifting from mockery to condescending authority. We've got this handled. We have a positive identification from the victim. We have the kid. Case closed. Why don't you just head on home and watch your television programs? He turns to walk away, a clear dismissal. The victim is a 78-year-old woman who just suffered a traumatic event. Arthur's voice cuts through the precinct noise, sharp and clear. Her identification, made under duress and likely under suggestion from the responding officer, is questionable at best. A proper investigation would require more than that to ruin a boy's life. Miller freezes. He turns back slowly, his face flushing a dull, angry red. The use of procedural language, the quiet confidence, it pricks at his inflated ego. Are you telling me how to do my job? He asks, his voice dangerously low. I am telling you that you are making a mistake, Arthur says. A lazy one. And an innocent person is going to pay the price for it. Lazy. Miller spits the word out. I've been a cop for 25 years. I've put more scumbags behind bars than you've had hot dinners. I know a guilty punk when I see 1 inch. He jabs a thick finger toward the interrogation room. That is a guilty punk. End of story. He gestures to the young Officer Davis, who has been watching the exchange with a mixture of fear and fascination. Davis. Take the old man's statement. Make it quick. Get all the details about how he saw a man, who looked vaguely like the suspect, from a great distance, in poor lighting. You know the drill. Make it fit. The order is blatant. Falsify the report. Neutralize the witness. Davis hesitates, a flicker of his academy-taught integrity warring with the primal instinct for survival in this precinct's toxic ecosystem. He swallows hard. Yes, Sergeant. He gestures for Arthur to follow him to a small, cluttered desk in the corner, a sad little island in the sea of bureaucratic chaos. Miller watches them go, a triumphant sneer on his face. He has won. He always wins. The old man is a minor inconvenience, a bump in the road, now smoothed over by the weight of his authority. He turns and strides toward the interrogation room, ready to break the terrified boy inside. At the small desk, Officer Davis pulls out a standard witness form, his hands fumbling slightly. He's young, barely 25, and he still believes, on some level, in the shield he wears. But he also knows that Frank Miller can end his career before it has even truly begun. "Okay, sir," he says, avoiding Arthur's eyes. "Let's just go through this. Your name?" "Arthur Vance." "Address?" Arthur provides it. "Okay, Mr. Vance. Tell me what you saw." Arthur begins to speak. His recollection is flawless, his language precise. He describes the scene not as a casual observer, but with the trained eye of an analyst. The time was approximately 2:15 p.m. "I was walking west on Elm Street. The victim was exiting the corner bakery. The perpetrator approached her from the south, from Parker Avenue. He was moving quickly, but not running, to avoid drawing attention." Davis scribbles furiously, trying to keep up. "He was a white male," Arthur continues, his voice level. "Approximately 6 feet tall, 190 pounds. Brown hair, cut short. He was wearing a grey hooded sweatshirt and dark blue jeans. He had a tattoo on the right side of his neck." Davis's pen stops moving. He looks up, his eyes wide. "A tattoo?" "Yes," Arthur says. "A spiderweb design. Black ink. This detail is a bomb. A specific, verifiable, and completely contradictory piece of information. Leo Jackson has no tattoos. Davis knows this. He was there during the booking. He saw the kid's bare arms and neck. A bead of sweat trickles down Davis's temple. This is not a confused old man. This is a credible witness. And Sergeant Miller just told him to bury the statement." From across the room, Miller's voice booms through the open door of the interrogation room. "Come on, kid. Just admit it. We know you did it. Your friend already rolled on you. Make it easy on yourself." They are lies, of course. Standard interrogation tactics, designed to break a suspect's will. But hearing them now, knowing what he knows, a wave of nausea washes over Officer Davis. He looks at the form in front of him. He looks at the calm, resolute face of Arthur Vance. He feels the weight of Miller's oppressive gaze, even from across the room. His hand trembles slightly as he picks up the pen. He knows what he is supposed to do. He's supposed to write, "Witness states he saw a male, description uncertain." He's supposed to protect his sergeant. Protect his career. Arthur watches him, his expression unreadable but his eyes missing nothing. He sees the young officer's internal struggle, the war between conscience and fear. Just then, Miller emerges from the interrogation room, a scowl on his face. The kid isn't breaking as easily as he'd hoped. He sees Davis and Arthur, still at the desk. His eyes narrow. "What's taking so long, Davis? You writing a novel? Just get his signature and let him go." He strides over, his presence sucking the air out of the space around the small desk. He looms over Davis's shoulder, his gaze falling on the notepad where the young officer has written the words "spiderweb tattoo." Miller's face darkens. "What the hell is this?" he snarls, his voice a low growl. Davis flinches. "Sir, the witness, he says the perpetrator had her." "I don't give a damn what he says." Miller cuts him off, his voice rising. "I gave you an order, officer. Are you incapable of following a simple order?" He turns his fury on Arthur. "And you? You're still here? I thought I told you to go home." "I will leave," Arthur says calmly, "as soon as my full and accurate statement has been officially recorded." Miller's face twists into a mask of pure rage. The audacity of this man, this nobody, to stand up to him in his own precinct. It is an affront to the natural order of his world. He leans in close to Arthur, his breath hot and sour with the smell of stale coffee and donut. His voice drops to a venomous hiss. "Listen to me, Pop. And listen good. We got our guy. He's going down. That's the end of it. You keep pushing this, you keep interfering with a police investigation, and I will find a nice, cozy little cell for you. Obstruction of justice carries a penalty. I wonder how a man your age would handle a night in the county lockup. He straightens up, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. Maybe you and your little project rat can be cellmates. You can tell him all about the good old days while he cries for his mommy. It is a threat, blunt and brutal. It is a clear abuse of power. And for Officer Davis, it is the final straw. But for Arthur Vance, it is merely a tactical error on his opponent's part. He sees the fear in Miller's eyes, masquerading as anger. The fear of being wrong. The fear of being exposed. Arthur remains silent for a moment, letting the threat hang in the air, letting its ugliness permeate the space around them. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't back down. His stillness seems to infuriate Miller even more. "What's the matter, old man?" Miller goads. "Cat got your tongue? Or did you finally realize who you're messing with?" Arthur meets his gaze. "Detective," he says, his voice quiet but carrying an immense weight. "You are making a grave mistake." That phrase again. It's the quiet certainty behind it that drives a spike of pure fury into Miller's brain. He slams his hand down on the desk, making the pens and papers jump. The entire squad room falls silent. Everyone turns to look. "No." Miller bellows, his face now a blotchy purple. "You're the one making the mistake. You think anyone cares about that piece of trash in there?" He points a trembling finger toward the interrogation room. His father is a drunk who can't hold a job. His mother ran off years ago. He has no one. No one to cry for him, no one to pay for a lawyer, no one to even notice he's gone. He turns his full, unrestrained venom on Arthur. "And you? You're a nobody. You walk in here off the street, thinking you can tell me how to do my job? Nobody is going to listen to you. Nobody cares what you think. And nobody, especially not some washed-up old man trying to play hero, is going to stop me from putting that animal in a cage where he belongs." He is screaming now, spittle flying from his lips. He has thrown the case file for Leo Jackson onto the desk, and it lies open, a pathetic summary of a short, hard life. He has crossed the line. He has moved from simple prejudice to a monstrous declaration of a boy's worthlessness. He has declared Leo subhuman, a creature unworthy of justice or even basic consideration. And in that moment, Arthur Vance's demeanor changes. The stillness remains, but it is no longer the stillness of a calm lake. It is the stillness of a coiled serpent. The patience in his eyes is gone, replaced by something cold and hard and ancient. It is the look of a man who has waded through the absolute worst of humanity and has come out the other side, not unscathed, but unbreakable. He does not raise his voice. He does not need to. He simply reaches into the inside pocket of his worn jacket. Miller instinctively tenses, his hand dropping toward the gun on his hip. But Arthur does not produce a weapon. He produces an old, cracked leather wallet and a simple, outdated flip phone. He opens the phone with a practiced thumb, his movements economical and precise. He scrolls through his contacts, his eyes never leaving Miller's. Miller watches, confused and wary. "What are you doing?" he demands. "Calling your parole officer." Arthur ignores him. He finds the number he is looking for and presses the call button. He raises the phone to his ear, his back turned slightly to Miller, a gesture of casual dismissal that is more insulting than any shout. "Commissioner Reynolds' office," he says into the phone. The name drops into the silent precinct like a thunderclap. Police Commissioner Helen Reynolds. The most powerful law enforcement official in the city. Miller's sneer falters. He tells himself it's a bluff. A desperate, pathetic bluff. "Yeah, put her on," Arthur says, his tone utterly devoid of deference. "Tell her it's Arthur Vance." A pause. The entire squad room seems to be holding its breath. Every officer, every clerk, is frozen, watching this impossible scene unfold. "Helen," Arthur says, a note of familiar warmth entering his voice for the first time. "It's Arthur." "Yes, I'm fine, thank you." "Listen, I'm sorry to bother you at the office, but there's a situation." He turns to face Miller fully now, the phone still pressed to his ear. He lets his cold, analytical gaze sweep over the detective. I'm down at the 17th precinct. There's an issue with one of your detectives. A Sergeant Frank Miller. Miller's face, which had been flushed with rage, begins to drain of all color. The name? Vance. Arthur Vance. A dusty file cabinet in the back of his memory begins to creak open. A name from old stories, from legends told by the grey-haired veterans of the force. A ghost. Yes, that's him, Arthur continues into the phone, his eyes locked on Miller's. I'm here as a material witness to a street robbery. Sergeant Miller is refusing to take my statement, attempting to coerce a false confession from an innocent juvenile, and has buried exculpatory evidence. He pauses, listening. Oh, it gets better. He just threatened to arrest me for obstruction of justice when I insisted on providing an accurate account. Miller starts to stammer. Now, hold on a minute, this is a misunderstanding. His voice is a weak croak. The hammer has been disarmed. The king is being dethroned. Yes, Helen, I think that would be wise, Arthur says. Send a team from Internal Affairs. And you might want to have Chief of Detectives Martinez meet them here. I believe he'll want to handle this personally. Immediately. He listens for another moment. Thank you, Helen. I'll see you at dinner on Sunday. He flips the phone shut. The click echoes in the cavernous silence of the room. He slips the phone and wallet back into his pocket. He looks at the man in front of him, the man who, just moments before, had been the absolute ruler of this small, squalid world. He looks at the pathetic, crumbling ruin of Frank Miller. Miller's jaw is slack, his eyes wide with a dawning, sickening horror. Vance, he whispers, the name a ragged breath. Arthur Vance? As in? Captain Vance? From Homicide Division. The legend. The man who closed the case on the West Side Strangler. The man who dismantled the O'Connell crime family. The man who wrote the book on interrogation techniques, the very book Miller kept in his desk but had clearly never understood. The man who retired a decade ago but whose shadow still loomed large over the entire department. Arthur gives a small, almost imperceptible nod. Retired, he says, his voice flat and cold as a morgue slab. But one develops certain habits. And one never forgets the smell of a dirty cop. The power dynamic in the room has not just shifted. It has been annihilated. It has been turned inside out and utterly destroyed. The desk sergeant looks like he has seen a ghost. He is trying to make himself as small as possible behind his desk, as if hoping the crossword puzzle might swallow him whole. Officer Davis stares at Arthur, his mouth agape, a look of pure, unadulterated awe on his face. He is looking at a living deity of police work. And Frank Miller? Frank Miller looks like a man who has just been informed that the gallows are being built especially for him. He begins to sweat profusely, the polyester of his shirt clinging to his skin. He opens his mouth to speak, to apologize, to bargain, but no words come out. He is a fish on the deck of a boat, gasping for the water of authority that has just been drained away from him. The precinct, which had been a cacophony of noise, is now as quiet as a tomb. The only sound is the frantic, panic thumping of Frank Miller's own heart in his ears. The wait is not long. Less than 15 minutes. But for Miller, it is an eternity spent in a cold, airless void. The precinct doors swing open with a force that makes them bang against the stoppers. 2 men and 1 woman enter, all dressed in sharp, dark suits that scream federal agent, but are worse. Internal Affairs. Behind them strides a man with a salt and pepper mustache and the weary, intelligent eyes of a man who has seen it all. Chief of Detectives Alejandro Martinez. A man Arthur Vance had taken from a rookie beat cop and mentored all the way to the top. Martinez's eyes scan the room, taking in the tableau of frozen officers, the terrified desk sergeant, the crumbling detective Miller, and finally, the calm, waiting figure of Arthur Vance. He walks directly to Arthur, ignoring everyone else. He extends a hand. "Captain Vance," he says, his voice full of a deep and genuine respect that borders on reverence. "It's been too long." "Alex," Arthur replies, a ghost of a smile touching his lips as he shakes the offered hand. "Sorry to call you out on a Tuesday afternoon." "Never apologize for doing the right thing, Arthur. You taught me that." Martinez's gaze then shifts to Frank Miller. The warmth in his eyes vanishes, replaced by a glacial cold. "Sergeant Miller," he says, his voice dropping several degrees. "My office. Now." He turns to one of the IA investigators. "Secure the interrogation room. The boy inside is not to be spoken to by anyone but me. And get a youth advocate and a lawyer down here for him. Now." He looks at Officer Davis, who is still standing by the desk, pale and shaking. "Officer, you will come with me as well. You will bring your notepad and any forms you have filled out." Martinez gestures toward the precinct captain's office, a glass-walled cage that is suddenly the center of the universe. Miller shuffles forward, his feet dragging as if chained. His swagger is gone. His armor is gone. He is just a scared, guilty man in a cheap shirt. Arthur follows them, his presence a silent, looming judgment. They enter the office, and Martinez closes the door, but the glass walls offer no privacy. The entire squad room has become an audience to the public execution of a career. Martinez sits behind the captain's desk, claiming the seat of power. He gestures for Miller to stand in the middle of the room. "Sergeant Miller," Martinez begins, his voice dangerously calm. "Captain Vance, a man whose integrity is beyond reproach, tells me you have arrested a juvenile for a robbery he did not commit. He tells me you have ignored exculpatory evidence. He tells me you have threatened a civilian witness. Start talking. And I advise you to tell the truth, because I have a feeling Captain Vance has a much better memory for the details than you do." Miller begins to bluster, his last, desperate defense. "Chief, this is a misunderstanding. A simple, procedural disagreement. Captain Vance is retired, you know, his memory might not be what it once was." Arthur, standing quietly in the corner, speaks without being asked. His voice is not loud, but it cuts through Miller's pathetic excuses like a surgeon's scalpel. The perpetrator had a spiderweb tattoo on the right side of his neck. The victim, Mrs. Gable, fell and scraped her left hand. The strap of her purse was cut, not pulled, with a sharp blade, likely a box cutter. The perpetrator ran south on Parker and discarded a grey hooded sweatshirt in a dumpster behind the laundromat on the next block. The boy you have in custody, Leo Jackson, has no tattoos, was documented by his school's security camera as being over a mile away 7 minutes before the 911 call, and was wearing a blue jacket when he was arrested. Each detail is a hammer blow, dismantling Miller's shoddy construction of guilt. Martinez looks at Miller, his expression one of profound disgust. "Did you know about the tattoo, Frank?" Miller's face is slick with sweat. The victim was flustered, she wasn't clear." "Officer Davis," Martinez says, turning to the young officer. "Did the first officer on the scene mention a tattoo in his report?" Davis, his voice trembling but clear, reads from his notepad. The initial uniformed patrolman's notes state, "Victim mentions perp had a tattoo on his neck, possibly a spiderweb." Sergeant Miller was given that report. Betrayal. The first crack in the wall of silence that protected Miller for so long. Miller shoots a look of pure hatred at Davis. The young officer flinches but holds his ground. Martinez leans forward. "So you had that information, Frank? And you chose to ignore it. Why? Was it because it didn't fit your narrative? Because it didn't point to the easy target, the kid from the projects?" He picks up the phone on the desk. "Get me dispatch logs for the 17th for this afternoon. And run a check on known associates in the area with a spiderweb neck tattoo." He hangs up and looks at Miller. "You know what we're going to find, don't you, Frank? We're going to find a known felon, probably one of your old informants, who fits the description perfectly. Someone you're protecting. Or someone you cut a deal with. Which is it?" Miller shatters. The carefully constructed facade of the tough, no-nonsense cop crumbles into a pile of pathetic, whining dust. "He's a punk," he shrieks, his voice cracking. "Look at his record. A juvie charge for shoplifting. He was going to end up in a cell anyway. I'm doing the city a favor. I'm cleaning up the streets." It is a full confession. Not to a specific crime, but to a diseased mindset. He sees himself as a garbage man, and people like Leo are just trash to be swept up and thrown away, guilt or innocence be damned. The room is silent, the ugly admission hanging in the air like poison gas. Arthur Vance steps forward. "There's more," he says quietly. Every head turns to him. "When the real perpetrator ran past me, I saw he was wearing black leather gloves. A professional touch. But when I saw Sergeant Miller threatening me at the desk, I noticed his ring." He looks at Miller's left hand. A thick, ostentatious gold ring with a black onyx stone. The victim's wallet was found in a trash can behind Leo Jackson's apartment building. A convenient discovery. But an unlikely place for a fleeing robber to go. It was a plant. The person who put it there would have had to touch the dirty lid of the dumpster. Arthur pauses, letting the implication sink in. "I imagine a forensic sweep of that wallet and the inside of the dumpster lid will find traces of gold and onyx. Along with Sergeant Miller's fingerprints. It's a guess. A brilliant, educated, and utterly devastating guess, built on a lifetime of watching guilty men trip over their own arrogance. But Miller doesn't know it's a guess. In his panicked, guilty mind, it is a statement of fact. He looks at his own hand, at the ring, as if it has betrayed him. His face goes from white to a sickly, greenish-grey. He sways on his feet. But Arthur is not finished. This is not just about dismantling a lie. This is about annihilation. "There's one final thing," he says, his voice as cold as the grave. "I found it odd that the first responding officer was so quick to focus on Leo Jackson. The boy was 2 blocks away, walking home from a friend's house. He didn't fit the description. So how did they find him so quickly?" He pulls out his old flip phone again. He navigates to the gallery, his movement slow and deliberate. He turns the small screen toward Martinez. This is a time-stamped photograph of Detective Miller's unmarked vehicle, parked on a side street 3 blocks from the crime scene. The timestamp is 2:05 p.m. 10 minutes before the robbery even occurred. A collective gasp comes from the IA investigators. "He wasn't responding to a call," Arthur says, his voice a low, damning murmur. "He was waiting. He was part of it. This wasn't a mistake, Alex. It wasn't laziness." He looks directly at the broken man in the center of the room. "It was a setup. He and his informant framed that boy. The final nail. The coffin is built, sealed, and ready for burial." Section Chief Martinez rises from his chair, his face a mask of cold, controlled fury. He looks at Frank Miller not as a colleague, not even as a dirty cop, but as a contagion that must be purged. "Frank Miller," he says, his voice ringing with the finality of a judge's gavel. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, evidence tampering, falsifying a police report, perjury, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent." He nods to the IA investigators. They move in, their faces impassive. One of them produces a pair of handcuffs. The metallic click as they snap shut around Miller's wrists is the loudest sound in the world. They pull him from the office, out into the main squad room. Out in front of the men and women who had feared him, enabled him, and worked alongside him for years. His public humiliation is absolute. They strip him of his badge, his gun, his very identity. He begins to sob, great, racking sobs of a man who has lost everything and knows it is entirely his own fault. As they lead him past, a pathetic, weeping husk of a man, his eyes find Arthur Vance. "Why?" he chokes out. "Why me? It was just one kid." Arthur steps forward until he is standing directly in front of the cuffed detective. He looks into the ruined face of the man who had dismissed him as a nobody. You asked who cared about that boy, Arthur says, his voice low and intense, for Miller's ears alone. The answer is, I do. You saw a stereotype you could crush to close a case. But you were wrong. He leans in closer. You didn't see a witness, detective. You didn't see an old man. You saw a target for your prejudice. And that was the last, and biggest, mistake of your career. He steps back, his work done. They haul Frank Miller away, his cries echoing down the hall until they are finally silenced by a closing door. The kingdom has fallen. The tyrant is deposed. And the quiet man in the worn coat stands victorious in the ruins. The fallout is not a firestorm. It is a controlled demolition, precise and devastating. Frank Miller, stripped of his power and pride, tries to fight. He hires a lawyer who claims it is all a misunderstanding, a vendetta by a retired captain with a fading memory. But the evidence is a mountain, and Miller is buried beneath it. The spiderweb tattooed informant, faced with his own long prison sentence, confesses everything. He details years of collaboration with Miller, a sordid history of planted evidence, coerced confessions, and buried facts, all in service of Miller's legendary clearance rate. He was Miller's pet felon, let off on minor charges in exchange for serving up easy arrests, and when there were none to be had, for helping to create them. The case of Leo Jackson was supposed to be just another easy win. The informant committed the robbery, and Miller was there to steer the investigation toward the pre-selected scapegoat. It was a perfect, ugly little system. And it was all brought down by one man they failed to see. Miller is convicted on every single charge. The judge, a woman known for her stern adherence to the law, makes an example of him. She sentences him to 25 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole. She speaks of the sacred trust he betrayed, the stain he placed on the badge worn by honest officers. His pension is seized. His commendations are revoked. His name becomes a curse word in the halls of the 17th precinct. His conviction triggers a mandatory review of every case he ever closed. A special task force is formed, headed by a bulldog from the DA's office. What they uncover is a cesspool. Over the next year, 14 of Miller's felony convictions are overturned. 14 men, some of whom had spent over a decade in prison for crimes they did not commit, are set free. The city pays out tens of millions of dollars in wrongful conviction settlements. The desk sergeant who dismissed Arthur is demoted. He spends the rest of his career directing traffic in a forgotten corner of the city, rain or shine, a permanent, public monument to the cost of complicity. Other officers who were found to have looked the other way are disciplined, transferred, or forced into early retirement. The 17th precinct is gutted and rebuilt, not with brick and mortar, but with new personnel and a new captain who speaks of transparency and accountability. The change is slow and painful, but it is real. For the heroes of the story, the rewards are less dramatic, but more profound. Leo Jackson is released from the interrogation room that same afternoon. The charges are not just dropped, they are expunged, wiped from existence as if they never happened. The city issues a formal, public apology to him and his family. He receives a substantial financial settlement, enough to change the trajectory of his life. But more important than the money is the mentorship he gains. Arthur Vance takes the boy under his wing. He sees in Leo not a victim, but a survivor with a core of untapped potential. He ensures Leo gets counseling, finishes high school, and enrolls in community college. He becomes the father figure the boy never had. Officer Davis becomes a key witness at Miller's trial. He testifies truthfully and bravely, despite the implicit pressure from some old guard officers to stay silent. His courage does not go unnoticed. Chief Martinez personally oversees his transfer to the elite robbery homicide division, partnering him with a seasoned detective known for her integrity. Davis's career, which Miller had threatened to end, is instead launched into the stratosphere. And Arthur Vance, who wanted nothing more than a quiet retirement, finds himself reluctantly pulled back into the world he left behind. Commissioner Reynolds asks him to co-chair a new citywide task force on police reform. He agrees, on one condition, that the task force has real power to enact change, not just to write reports that gather dust. She grants it. The Vance Protocol is developed, a new set of strict, evidence-based guidelines for witness intake and suspect identification, designed to eliminate confirmation bias. It becomes the new gold standard for departments across the country. The system Miller so expertly manipulated is dismantled and rebuilt, stronger and fairer than before. His arrogance did not just destroy himself, it inadvertently triggered the very reforms he would have despised. That is the ultimate irony. 6 months later. The scene is not a grimy police precinct, but a brightly lit community center in the heart of the Warren Street neighborhood. The air smells not of despair, but of fresh paint and possibility. The center was funded by a large anonymous donation, but everyone knows the money came from a portion of Leo Jackson's settlement. It is a place of hope, built from the ashes of injustice. Arthur Vance stands near a window, watching the scene inside. He is no longer just a silhouette. He is a pillar. He watches Leo, who is no longer a terrified boy, but a confident young man. Leo is leaning over a table, patiently helping a young girl with her math homework. He laughs, and the sound is free and unburdened. He is working part-time at the center while he studies criminal justice at college. He wants to become a defense attorney. He wants to fight for the kids who have no one else to fight for them. Commissioner Reynolds comes to stand beside Arthur. She is out of uniform, dressed in simple civilian clothes. "You've done a good thing here, Arthur," she says quietly. "Leo did this," Arthur corrects her. "I just opened the door for him. He was the one strong enough to walk through it." They watch in comfortable silence for a moment. "I got a letter from Frank Miller's wife last week," she says, begging me to support his appeal. She says he's a broken man. "He was a broken man long before he went to prison," Arthur says, his gaze fixed on Leo. "He was just too powerful for anyone to notice." That is the moral of the story, hanging in the air between them. Arrogance is a blindness. Power, unchecked, is a disease. Frank Miller was so blinded by his prejudice, so convinced of his own infallibility, that he could not see what was standing right in front of him. He did not see a man. He saw a color. He did not see a citizen. He saw a stereotype. He did not see a witness with a mind like a steel trap and a will of iron. He saw a powerless old man he could intimidate and dismiss. He thought he was a hammer, strong and unbreakable, entitled to decide who was a nail. But he made one, simple, fatal mistake. He tried to hammer a mountain. And the mountain did not move. It simply stood its ground, and in the end, the hammer shattered against it. Justice is not always loud. Sometimes, it is a quiet, patient man in a worn coat, waiting for the powerful to make the one mistake they always make, underestimating the person they have chosen to wrong.